Welcome to the Total Soccer Show, and a show we like to call USMNT Weekly. On today's show, we're looking ahead to the Costa Rica game. We're looking at the USMNT stars who might be on the move with their domestic clubs, and if we get time, we'll throw in a listener question or two. So stick around. My name's Ryan Bailey. Joining me today, your friend, my friend, Taylor Rocco. Hello, Taylor.
Hello, Ryan Bailey. Once again, always lovely to have you on to talk about national team things. I know it's your favorite thing, especially when it comes to the U.S. Thank you for the sacrifice to be here today.
You're very welcome. The true burden of podcasting, talking to my friends about soccer, is a tough one to carry on my shoulders, Taylor. But I'll do
Sometimes
it
seems that way.
Only during non-FIFA approved windows. Joe Lowry's here. Joe, hi Joe. How are you?
I can't decide if this is the worst thing for Ryan, who famously does not enjoy international soccer, just to really paint the rest of that picture, or if the fact that this is just like a fake international window that we've made with plenty of other club soccer around it means that he doesn't have to worry about the international window, or if it is even more offensive to his club soccer sensibilities. Ryan, weigh in here.
Let's find out as the show progresses, shall we, Joe?
Fair enough.
Graham Muffin's here. Hello, Graham.
Hello, Ryan Bailey. We are all forgetting one thing, right? This isn't a normal international window. This is one with Patrick Agyemang, or number 33, as Ryan's daughter calls him. Is she still hyped about his performance at the weekend, Ryan? Still
Big
talking
time.
about it?
Yeah, big time. She's talking about that through ball and the beautiful low finish. She can't get over it, Graham. She's looking forward to the Costa Rica game later this week, which we'll talk about on this show and much, much more. Graham, by the way, wearing a lovely Oakland Roots jersey as we record. You can see it, ladies and gents, if you head to our YouTube channel, because we put these things on the YouTube now. You'll see Joe in his lovely Parisian Airbnb? What you got
Chateau?
there, Joe?
Yes, my Parisian Airbnb with the croissants being thrown around in the background. And what else did we say yesterday? Some sort of protest? It's all happening behind me. You won't see it unless you're on YouTube. You just won't.
Very good. We look forward to seeing that on the YouTube. Also, we have a Patreon. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show is the best way to support this here endeavor. Bonus episodes, videos, and access to our Discord server where all the cool kids are hanging out. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show, please. And thank you. All right, Taylor, we are in the middle of Camp Cupcake/Lemon/ whatever we want to call it. It's great. We're loving it. We're in the middle of it. We've got a Costa Rica game coming up. Actually, before we get to talking about Costa Rica, Joe, were you able to catch any of the Venezuela game from your Parisian enclave? Or any thoughts about this window thus far?
Not that bothered about it over in France. I can't imagine that would be the case. But
I walked by a few people that were chanting Jack McGlynn earlier. Other than that, I didn't see much of a reaction. No, I've not been able to watch this game because for some reason it wasn't broadcast in Paris, and I just can't imagine why that is the case. I have seen the highlights, and I have enjoyed getting to consume some thoughts from people around the soccer sphere. Sort of the general takeaways that I've gathered from the masses. Patrick Agyemang, very good. Number one, that is not a mispronunciation. Number two, no Diego Luna makes us sad, and George Campbell kind of played as a central midfielder, which I am really curious to learn more about over time. Those are kind of the big takeaways. And other than that, I'm just hoping to absolutely dive in and demolish this game on Wednesday.
Inverted centre back, Joe, is I think what that position has been called for George
What?
Campbell. It was something, yeah. Yeah, during the game he was coming inside. He was in a weird position, like inside for a lot of, particularly in the first half, to receive
Taylor's
the ball
completely
coming out.
glazed over expression is making me think that everyone I've read talk about George Campbell was completely gaslighting me, and Graham is actually the originator of that trick that everyone's playing on me. Is this real or not? Because I haven't seen the game. I thought it was real. Taylor's expression makes me think it wasn't.
Well, I mean, I think he was the more aggressive of the two center backs in stepping out and like making plays. I'm more so flummoxed by an inverted center back. Doesn't just that
It's the John Stones thing.
Moving to the other side? Like
Did they face the goal?
We've lost the inverted meaning here, but it's like someone pushing into midfield, basically. It was inverted fullbacks pushing into midfield first, and then it's John Stones stepping forward for Man City, 2 seasons ago, whenever that was. I read that this is not a good podcast at the moment.
Libero. Joe, is that the libero we're talking about here?
I guess, yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's real, maybe it wasn't. Either way, I am excited about Agyemang a lot. I'm very excited about that. I could not believe that we didn't see Diego Luna start, and Pochettino doing Miljevic a favor is ridiculous at this point, but it's January camp, so it also doesn't matter that much. There are some names that I want to see get more minutes because I actually want to see them, and I think they have national team potential. There are also some names that I could do without seeing again, and I'm guessing the other guys on this panel are also in that same boat.
Any of those names you want to disclose at this point?
Yeah.
Ooh, absolutely. Guys that didn't start that I want to see start is sort of the first category of players that I have here. Matt Freese, who is the best shot stopper in this camp, saved more than 5 goals over expected this past season in his first year as a starter for NYCFC. That was 5th in all of Major League Soccer. He's got interest, according to Tom Bogert, from clubs in the Netherlands and Germany. It would not surprise me if we see a club come in and bid for Matt Freese, whether that's now or more likely in the summer transfer window. Diego Luna is just an obvious one. I still don't think we really have a great grasp of what his ceiling is. I think there's a chance his ceiling is lower than we all hope it is, but we just didn't get to see a lot of him in this last game against Venezuela. I want to see him start, and it feels just like a no-brainer, to be honest. And then the other guy that didn't start that I want to see start is Emeka Eneli, who I know comes off the bench. He's a fun player. I think the national team is probably above his ceiling. I know Doyle and some others who also watch a lot of Major League Soccer like me are way higher on Eneli than I am. I think he's a good player. I don't know that he's got that next level kick, but it would be nice to find out. Like, it would be nice to find out what he can bring at a level like this in a more sustained run out. So those are the 3 guys who didn't start that I absolutely want to see start in this game.
And Joe, all 3 of those players, it's just a case of having evidence about them, right? It's
totally.
It's not that we think that Luna or I don't want to speak for you, I'll speak for myself here. It's not that I think Luna is going to be a game changer for the US at 2026 World Cup, or Matt Freese or Eneli. It's just we don't really have any evidence about these guys. And the Luna thing is bizarre at this point. How last year we thought the Olympics is going to be his tournament, then he's left off. We still don't have any evidence. He gets called into this camp. We think, right, we're finally going to get a good look at Diego Luna. Then he's on the bench. And I know he comes off the bench and he does some nice things coming off the bench in this game. There's some nice, there's a chance for, I think it's Brian White in the last kind of 10 minutes of this game, where Luna has some nice quick feet, and that was nice to see. But he gets the garbage minutes in this game. So I want to see him from the start. I totally agree, Joe. On all 3 players, actually, I want to see Eneli in central midfield as well.
Yeah. It's a question mark because Eneli is incredibly good at drifting through pressure. I think he's a versatile player. I sort of question some of his passing range. For Luna, the question is, can he be engaged and working off the ball to receive and then continue to connect? And also, can he maybe do a bit better job beating players on the dribble? And then Freeze is just a question of, is he going to get minutes or not? I just don't know if Poch rates him, because Poch seems to evaluate goalkeepers in sort of a strange way, which is to continue to call Zach Steffen into camp. So I don't know exactly what's going on there. Some guys I want to see more of, and Taylor, I'm curious on your perspective on this as someone who actually watched this game. I want to see more of Max Arfsten at left back, because he was a player I had circled coming into this camp. Plays as a left wing back, played in a back 4 in this game as far as I understand it against Venezuela. I want to see more of Arfsten at left back. I want to see more of Jack McGlynn. I want to see more of Ajiman, and I want to see more of George Campbell as well. Like, those are the guys that I feel like are on the fringe enough to be interesting. Like, it's not interesting to see Walker Zimmerman. It's not interesting to see Miles Robinson or Tim Ream or Shaq Moore. It's interesting to see those 4 guys, and I hope we get to see more of them.
Yeah. Taylor, your thoughts on that one and what you want to see from this Costa Rica game? I mean, presumably we don't want to see just the same starting 11 again, right? That as an exercise feels a bit fruitless, doesn't it?
Ryan prematurely reacting to the face I made, because my note is I'm pretty much okay with seeing the exact same starting 11. I think there are changes I would like to see made. I would like to see Luna start. I would like to see Matt Freese start. And Nelly, I'm okay with starting, but I'm not too worried one way or the other.
Yeah.
And then in terms of the people that I want to see start again, I think specifically I had McGlynn, I had Ajimang, I had Gutierrez, because I basically had very few notes on him, which I think is actually a good thing. I think it means he was kind of doing his role well, but maybe flying under the radar. And then I thought Arfsten looked maybe a little bit overawed by the occasion, or maybe that's even putting it too grandly. But I just thought he wasn't as sharp as I expected. He had some errant passing, both in the attack and in defense, and I think at times just looked a little bit not quite out of his depth, but I think nervous, basically. And I want to see in a second game, does he look better? Does he look more comfortable? Does he have just a bit more confidence about him? And that's where I'm kind of okay with seeing mostly the same starting 11. Because I think, to Joe's point, like, we know what we're going to get out of Tim Ream, for example. We have a good idea what we're going to get out of Walker Zimmerman and Shaq Moore. So I'm okay with some of those players, Ream specifically, being there as more of like almost an assistant in this camp of like, we know what we're getting out of you. We know you're an elder statesman. We know that you can sort of lead by example, but now we've got to give these guys an opportunity to figure it out on their own. And so maybe you start the same center back pairing of Miles Robinson and George Campbell and see if they can elevate further from that first performance. You want to see if fullbacks can sort of get a better grasp of the position and what's being asked of them. But I thought Jack McGlynn was the player that looked most ready to play for the senior team, not just because of that goal, but because his decision-making is so solid. He plays simple when he needs to play simple. He plays more complex when he needs to. And so he is the one I'm most excited to see again. And then I'm very hopeful that we see Diego Luna, because I think in this last game against Venezuela, we saw that Luna can certainly come in and sort of boss the game when it's already comfortable. He can have little flicks and tricks, but also play simple as well, but then try stuff. And I think you have a luxury of, we know we're winning, it's all good. Can you do that from the start and look as composed, but also look as complete within the system? That's what I would most like to see, is Diego Luna get that start and look good to go.
Taylor, can I take us back to Max Arfson for a second and kind of broaden it out to a slightly wider point, which is one of my notes from the Venezuela game heading into the Costa Rica game is I'd like to see more in the wide areas from the US, and that kind of encapsulates everyone. That encapsulates Shaq Moore at right back, who I didn't think had a particularly good game, and there wasn't a lot of progression coming from him on the right side. Arfston, I thought I was slightly warmer in his performance than it seems you are, but I accept that there were times when maybe you wanted him to be a little bit bolder with his passing into central areas, which is something I think he does for the Crew, and we didn't really see that a whole lot in this game. But then further forward as well, it's not that I thought that Clark and Gutierrez had bad games, but there were a number of situations where Jack McGlynn, who I agree I think is the player of this camp so far who has elevated his stock to the point of maybe you bring him in for the March games in the Nations League, he gives you something a little bit different with his passing range. But that passing range was he was playing kind of long diagonals out to the wide areas, and so there was opportunities for the US to really drive in one-on-one situations at the opposition defenders, and I felt like they never really made the most of those opportunities. Now that might just be down to the profile of those players, of Clark and Gutierrez maybe not being the players to do that, but I'd still like to see the US activating, particularly when they're playing in quick transition, which they did generally a really good job of in central areas through Aguiman. But there is the opportunity in that setup to make more of the wide areas. And so I don't know whether that is bringing in DeJuan Jones at right back. When he came on in the game, I thought actually he was a little bit more bolder in taking on an opponent. I don't really know what the solution is. The camp is a little bit limited in that sense, but it was something from the first game that I thought the US could improve on.
Yeah, and that's a great thing to flag, Graham. I guess you took us to Arfston. I want to go back to McGlynn as well, as long as we're going back to things. I have not been able to listen to the full review that you guys did. Have you guys talked about Jack McGlynn being the only Philadelphia Union representative in this camp so far?
Now we have.
Okay, awesome.
We've covered it now.
I think it is notable. You're talking about, Graham, maybe him coming back into the squad in March. I think it is extremely notable that Jack McGlynn was the only Philadelphia Union player released for this camp. Reportedly, according to Tom Bogert and Jose Nunez as well, who covers the Philadelphia Union, they were also U.S. Soccer looking to bring in Nathan Harriel, who plays as a fullback, and maybe even Quinn Sullivan. Those guys do not end up coming into camp, and Jack McGlynn does. This is pure tea leaf reading, but feels relevant when we're talking about the future. I could see Jack McGlynn going abroad. We had for Backheel, Sanjay Sujanta Kumar chat with Jack McGlynn for a feature that's up on the site right now. And McGlynn basically just comes out and says, I'm ready. He says, I'm ready to go. Like, I'm ready to take on that challenge. Not that he's trying to force a move or anything like that. But I do think it is fairly telling that the Union said, hey, Jack, you can go. I think they view him as a player that when the right offer comes in, and that could be this month, it could be in the summer transfer window, but probably this season, when that offer comes across the line, he's probably going to move on. And so I'm encouraged that he's had a good camp so far, even outside of the banger. Not perfect in that first game, but he's had good moments, because I do think his career is really going to hit that upward trajectory. And the question is, when he moves, it's not if, but when he moves, will he continue to perform at the level he did last year for Philly? If so, I do think we're going to see a lot more of him for the U.S.
We'll see. Which relegation German candidate do you see him going to then, Joe?
He talked about in the piece, Jack McGlynn, that Sanjay wrote for us, he talked about the Eredivisie as being a league that he thinks could be a good fit for him. Paxton Aronson, former teammate of his, is playing over in the Eredivisie right now. Plenty of other Americans as well, one that we'll talk about later on in this show. So maybe more the Netherlands rather than relegation fodder in Germany, but time will tell, I guess.
Right, Hoffenheim it is.
There we go. Found it. All right, USMNT Costa Rica is at 7 Eastern on Wednesday at Graham Ruthven's spiritual home of Orlando, Florida. Graham, are you going to be buried there? Ashley's going to be spread down International Drive in from like a Tony Roma's takeout box or something?
I think Disney do a package, actually. They can make that happen, yeah.
Good for you. Okay, I'm pleased for that for you. Yeah, that one happening on Wednesday. I'm presuming, Joe, they're going to be showing it on the big screens at the Champs-Elysees at 1 a.m. local time for you as well. So
yeah, 100%. I'll be there. Red, white, and blue body paint all over. Let's go.
Hey, they've got the right colours.
Yeah.
Like, they won't need to buy new paint.
So you'll fit right in.
Graham.
Yeah,
Nice.
very good.
If
Excellent
we
stuff.
gave them those colors, let's not let them forget that. For sure, it was America first. Graham, one question for you before we jump. Milhevic, is there anything he can do to make you feel better about him as a number 10, as a contributor to the U.S. national team? He gets the assist in the last game, lest we forget. He gets the banger of a goal. That is,
I wish
maybe
he'd show some
more
fight, to
worth
be
noting.
honest. That's what I want him to show.
Yeah, he totally meant that assist, and if you disagree, he'll fight you.
Assists are a great stat, by the way. Please go ahead, Graham. But yeah.
To be honest, right, his first half was a disaster clash, right? I think we can all agree on that. His second half wasn't so bad. There were moments. I mean, the goal was nice. His goal is very nice. So if we see more like, it felt like when he was taking the ball deep and then turning and driving forward with it into space, that tended to be where he was, like he did for the goal. That's where he was able to offer something. But his possession play, linking up, just the little 10-yard passes in the first half, it seemed like he was struggling to complete a pass. Like, it didn't matter how short it was, how simple it was. He just couldn't get his rhythm going. So I guess that would be the thing that would make me feel better about him if we saw more of him as a rhythm builder in that central unit.
All right. Let's take
Fatbob
us...
lists him as a Hurricane player? That is just Fatbob having a
So that
glitch,
was
right?
the rumour that he was going to
Okay.
go to Hurricane, but I don't know
Okay.
whether that's been completed or not yet.
Okay. That would be an odd thing to do in the middle of camp, to little fanfare. But who
He's
knows?
a wild card.
They saw that assist and they thought, that's the guy we need, for sure.
Graham, when you were younger, was there a cartoon called The Hurricanes on children's TV?
Yes, there was, yeah.
Yeah,
There was,
I don't know if
yeah.
that was in the States. It was a soccer team called the Hurricanes, and it just always makes you think of Hurricane. Maybe they were based on them. Probably not.
Remember when Ryan really wanted to move us along and was like, we got to keep going. We don't have time for nonsense in these segments.
Let's do another 5 minutes on Deli Ali and baked beans before we take a break. And when we come back, we'll do some USMNT transfer talk. Join us then.
Don't threaten me with a good time.
Total Soccer Show, welcome back to USMNT Weekly. A quick update on the Hurricanes. We've just looked it up and confirmed it did run from 1993 to 1997. Apparently a joint venture between, Graham, Scottish TV and
Pins
the
and
Disney
needles.
company. Wow, look at that.
Yeah.
Look at the conversion.
An American-Scottish partnership, just like Tyler Adams and Ryan Christie. A match made in heaven.
Wonderful stuff. Well, let's talk about some potential matches made in heaven in terms of players finding new clubs, shall we? There's some American players on the rumour mill as we speak. The usual suspects are there, but also Tim Weah is up on the on the transfer list potentially. Potentially, Graham, with a move to the Premier League. What are we seeing here?
Yeah, so this was reported on Monday by Calcio Mercato, which is a newspaper in Italy. It's also been jumped on by some outlets in Germany as well, because there's some interest from Eintracht Frankfurt and RB Leipzig, apparently. But Everton are the club that was mentioned most strongly by this report in Italy, that they are considering an offer for Weah in this transfer window. Now, obviously, Weah has just come off a match against Milan. We spoke about it on Weekend Review yesterday, where he makes a real difference off the bench and he scores a goal in a 2-0 win, and he's been useful for Juve in general this season. He's played on the right wing. He's even played as a centre forward in a couple of games where Dusan Vlahovic has been either injured or suspended or certainly unavailable. But Juventus are in a position where essentially, with the exception of like 2 or 3 players, they would entertain offers for all members of their squad at this point. So
They would or would not?
They would
Okay.
entertain offers. Financially, they're just in a position where they need to sell to buy players, and Motta's obviously remoulding that squad.
Who's on the list of players who would be like non-negotiable, like Vlahovic and a couple others?
No, Vlahovic is absolutely one of the players who they would.
Yeah,
who they
there's
would
Weston,
sell.
and then there's McKennie, and then there's West.
Weston, McKinney, and there's
Yeah,
West.
West.
Okay. Mhm.
IN and ON are different.
Yeah, who's untouchable, Graham? That's what I'm curious there.
So I
You
think
not
the players that they've just brought in, right? So like Cope Miners, Nico Gonzalez, Gleison Bremer, who's out injured at the moment. I think these are like the untouchable players. But
Okay.
basically everyone is, if you put an offer in for a Juventus player at the moment, there's a chance that they will consider it, which is, I have to imagine, where this speculation comes from. And yeah, Everton are interested in him. What do we think about that? I've kind of got mixed thoughts on Everton as a fit for Tim Weah, because I think like 2 or 3 weeks ago I would have said absolutely not. Now, I mean, I still think it makes me nervous, but now I can sort of form an argument for it, I think.
Yeah, Graham, that's almost exactly what I have down in my notes. I started just typing a stream of consciousness about this to try and get myself sorted out.
Read
and
it
my very
out.
first line
Read
was
it
absolutely not. And then later on, I'm like, well, hold on. Maybe there's a way that this works. I still think my answer is no. And especially with some other interesting options in Germany on the table, although I think my answer right now to those is also no. But with the chance of Everton getting relegated, even though it is unlikely, it is still not zero. There's a 0% chance that Juve are going to get relegated. I just don't think Everton are quite stable enough for me to actively want a U.S. player to go there. That said, the timing could be just right in a very weird way where Everton are finding some stability, the ownership change, getting some actual results. And again, it doesn't seem like they're going to get relegated. I don't hate it as much as I feel like I would have maybe a month ago. At the same time, I probably wouldn't make that move. The one that intrigues me the most, and sorry to get us off, and then I know we'll get back to Everton, is Frankfurt. If Eintracht Frankfurt sell Marmoush and sign Weah, and there's just more minutes to soak up in the attack, I don't think that would do any sort of like-for-like replacement on that front. But that is the thing that intrigues me the most, even if it is unlikely on all this.
That is an interesting one, Joe, because I thought about that and how he would fit into their tactical setup where they don't really have high and wide wingers as such, Frankfurt. If it's a light-for-light replacement, obviously they could change their setup with Marmoush gone. But have we seen Tim Weah as part of a front two before in his career? Has he ever played that position? Because that would be, if he was slotting straight into that team as the replacement for Marmoush, he would be played as a front two alongside Ekitike.
I don't.
I think for maybe stretches at Lille when he goes there initially.
Yeah, that's a good shout.
And then I don't think he was at Celtic, right?
He was,
Celtic and PSG,
but even there, I don't think so. But I feel like maybe early on in Lille, occasionally he was partnered with somebody. It was like Burak Yilmaz, I think.
Thanks, Fran. I remember Weah playing wider with that Lille team than I remember him playing through the middle. But he probably did play through a strike partnership at some point. The thing with Tim Weah is I think that actually suits him quite well. He is super tricky. When I think of Tim Weah, I think of his best skill as combining in tight spots and having the kind of tricks and flicks. He's not a great 1v1 dribbler, which I think has limited his ability as a winger, but he is somebody who is a good passer of the ball. I think he's somebody with good vision and a good feel for the game. I know that sounds kind of ethereal, but I think Weah would actually do really well in a front two if he's the little man and sort of a little man, big man partnership, that sort of thing.
Not one part of this rumor makes sense to me. I'm not going to lie.
Which one?
Any
Everton?
of them. Any of them.
All of it.
But yeah, let's start with Everton. I think specifically because Tim Weah is a good player. I like Tim Weah a lot. 14 matches, 8 starts, 5 goals this season in Serie A. So, okay numbers. But I don't think of that necessarily being, in his career thus far, being one that makes clubs such as Everton and Eintracht Frankfurt and Leipzig to some extent see him as that's the guy we've got to go for in January. Maybe because he's going to be slightly more cost-effective. But to Graham's point, I still think Juve are going to want a good enough transfer fee to make this happen. They're going to want that money to then be able to reinvest it. So it feels a little bit random that he is the one being spotlighted. I often wonder, is that to drive engagement from U.S. markets maybe or something like that? Maybe that's why there's interest. But it's also the case that it's an Everton team that we're struggling. Maybe under David Moyes with the kind of new ownership and a new stadium, it's a better vibe, it's a better atmosphere, it's a better place to be. I still don't know why, if you are Everton or Frankfurt, really, you're looking at him as that's the guy that's going to make us better this season, which is what both of them need. Everton need to be better this season to stay up in the Premier League. Frankfurt are alive in the title conversation, alive in the Champions League places. So bringing him in, I'm not sure if that is going to do the job right away, and that's where it just feels a little bit scattered. In that link, I'm having a harder time understanding it. Doesn't mean I wouldn't want it to happen. I think I echo Joe's sentiment that Frankfurt, of those three, is the one that would have me feeling the most optimistic because they seem to be the best at making stable transfers and sort of revitalizing players when it seems like they're on the outs, but also utilizing players when they're in good form. I'm just still kind of confused as to why it's Tim Weah that they're all that's the guy we need.
Yeah, and I get the sense that this is a lot of very early days kind of speculation with all this. I don't know how close any of these things would happen, but at the right price, I think Tim Weah would be a useful piece for all of these teams, right? He's a useful piece who's putting up solid goal-scoring numbers in limited minutes for a gigantic club in Italy. I don't think it's a huge leap if you're viewing Tim Weah as a spot starter and 30 minutes off the bench kind of guy. And that's my question for you, Graham. with Everton specifically, if we think that's the one that is maybe the most tangible of all these, like, what is Tim Weah's role for Everton? Where is he on the attacking pecking order? How much do you think he would actually play?
I think he'd be a key figure for Everton. I think Everton needs someone on the right side. At the moment, they're playing Jesper Lindstrom on that right side. And Lindstrom is a decent enough player, but he is not someone who's going to stretch the pitch. He's not someone who's going to get in behind in the way that Tim Weah wants to. And so I think he gives David Moyes' teams, David Moyes' good teams, I should say, always have that verticality. West Ham certainly had that verticality with people like Mikel Antonio. And so Dominic Calvert-Lewin isn't really going to give you that as a focal point in the attack. So I think you're looking for one of the wingers to do it. Dwight McNeil on the left side is a nailed-on starter, one of the few players you would say this season has impressed for Everton. But he likes to come inside, take shots from the edge of the box. Again, he's not someone who wants to stretch the pitch. I think Tim Weah would be an absolute starter on that right side. So that's the way up for me with Tim Weah is come from a more stable club in Juventus, a bigger club where you've got more of a platform, but you're not a nailed-on starter, even if you're scoring goals in big games like you did at the weekend there, or you go to somewhere like Everton where you will be one of the main men, and I think he probably would be one of the main men for them.
So you go Tim Weah over Jack Harrison?
Yes, absolutely at this point.
Have a little respect for the former Gatorade Player of the Year, Graham. Come on.
Is that a real thing?
I think so. Yeah, we're close, at least.
I believe he was also briefly driven by Continental as well, yes.
There we go. Wonderful stuff. Let's stick with the Mercato for a second. Gio Reyna, apparently, maybe, possibly, going to AC Milan, along with everyone else who's linked with Milan at this point. Graham, any insight on this link here? Where would he actually fit in a Milan side? I'm curious.
It's a good question. So Sky Germany had a report over the weekend. Milanello has some space in the physio's room that they need filling, so Gio Reyna would do that. No, Sky Germany had a report over the weekend that AC Milan had met with Reyna's agents, although they haven't held talks with Dortmund yet. Apparently this would be a permanent move. So obviously Gio Reyna a year ago left to go to Nottingham Forest on loan. My initial instinct is this would have been a loan deal, but apparently not. It's a permanent move, and Dortmund have set an asking price of 15 to 18 million euros, which sounds low and is low, but apparently is a hurdle because Milan are signing Kyle Walker this week, and apparently a consequence of that is they are ditching the Rashford move that they wanted to make because they don't have the finances. So there is a question over how they would find that money to sign Gio Reyna permanently. To answer your question, Ryan, about where he would fit in, Reyna, stylistically, tactically, he's been playing in quick transition teams his whole life. So actually, I think Milan under Conceição might be a decent fit for him. But it is similar to that Nottingham Forest thing last year, where is he actually going to get game time? Because it's either been a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3 from Conceição this season. And in both cases, I think Reyna has a tough time breaking into that midfield unit because he's not going to dislodge Fofana as the pace setter in that midfield. He's a very different sort of midfielder to Yunus Musa, and Conceição seems to have taken a shine to him at Milan since coming in there. So that leaves Thierry Reinders as the player who plays in the position that suits Reyna best. And Reinders behind Pulisic has probably been Milan's best player this season. So it's tough for Reyna at Milan if you're placing him in that team.
Yeah. On Taylor's make sense-ometer, if Tim Weah doesn't really make sense for Everton, I'm guessing this one sits a little low on the index. Taylor, is that fair?
I'm not sure who it makes less sense for. For Dortmund, I mean, I still think he can be a contributor when he is healthy. That's something Nuri Sahin has talked about. I just also don't know how much longer Nuri Sahin is going to be Dortmund manager, and that makes things a little bit more confusing because then do you keep Gio Reyna, do you keep the squad as it is with the idea that maybe you're going to bring in a new manager or maybe Edin Terzic 3.0? I think Erik ten Hag is the other one who's been linked there. But I think there is a level of chaos at Dortmund right now that makes it hard to know what Gio Reyna should do, because I think in my mind this season was going to be him as the backup to Julian Brandt as the kind of deputy in games, but then also getting occasional starts and popping up in other positions with a Dortmund team that were going to be stable and challenging for top 4 or thereabouts. And instead it's been a pretty rough season so far. They are presently in 10th. It has not been inspiring football, to say the least, from Nuri Sahin, who is still very much on the hot seat. And so it doesn't feel like a stable situation at Dortmund, and it never feels fully like a stable situation for Gio Reyna, but even less so now. But I also don't know if going to Milan, which itself isn't particularly stable, but also doesn't really have areas of need in the positions he's most likely to play, as Graham has already outlined, it feels a bit of a conundrum, and that's where I don't know if that's the move that's going to end up happening. I won't be surprised if Reyna moves this January. I just doubt it's to Milan.
All right, we shall see. How about, Joe, Ricardo Pepi? 10 goals in 17 with PSV this season already. Are we sensing a move away from the Eredivisie, perhaps? What are we thinking?
I'm sensing there are teams that want Ricardo Pepi to be moving away from the Eredivisie. I am sensing that Ernie Stewart either is not going to allow that to happen as their director of football PSV, or I'm sensing that he is doing quite well to motivate teams to bid more money to give an offer that PSV can't refuse. Ernie Stewart told Goal, quote, "There's not going to be a transfer. That's one thing that's for sure. Nothing's ever for sure in this game, so you come up with the right price." I think he also says in a similar interview that's quite good. I think it's Ryan Tolmich over at Goal. Apologies if that's not right. He also says something about how at PSV our job is to develop players and sell them on. So, you put a couple bags of cash on the desk and it's going to happen. With that being said, I would be a little surprised if PSV moves on this window. It's not impossible. Again, if the offer is right, and Goal was also reported last month, I think it was, that a Premier League club made a $20 million offer for Ricardo Pepi, that perks up some ears in the Netherlands for sure. I don't think it's going to happen. It's possible. I don't think it's going to happen, mostly because the reason why Pepi, I think, should stick around is that Luke de Jong's contract is going to expire at the end of the season.
Get that old bum out of here. Honestly, missed a penalty of the weekend. He's done. He's washed. I don't know why Luke de Jong annoys me so much, but he does.
I mean, yeah, that's basically it. I don't even have anything else to say. I think Pepe is gonna outstay De Jong's welcome at least, and he's gonna slide into being that number one next season. And I think that's a pretty cushy job, to be honest. It's probably not his forever job, but scoring goals for fun is what happens when you're a PSV striker these days. I just don't think he should move. I just don't think it's a good idea, to be honest.
Fair enough. Graham, where has he been linked at this point? Do we know? Or what was the Premier League club who wanted to pay $20 million for him?
The Goal report, I've read the same report as Joe, doesn't actually specify the club that made that bid, and it also said that there was interest in him from France, although again didn't specify which team. But I
called.
It was Joe. I did a quick Google search of just tentative links and teams that have been linked with him. So the teams that came up were Liverpool, Atletico Madrid, Borussia Dortmund, Juventus, Bayern Munich, which all sounds very, very impressive. And Ricardo Pepi doesn't start for any of those teams. So I kind of question what would be the point of going to Liverpool for Ricardo Pepi. If he's going to leave PSV, and I'm kind of split on what I think he should do, because I think he absolutely should be the succession plan for Luke de Jong, who surely is getting phased out of that team sooner rather than later at the age of 34. But if he could feasibly find another spot in another Big Five league where he would be the starting centre forward, then yeah, I could feasibly get behind that idea. It's just the clubs that he's been linked with, that doesn't really fit what I've just said.
Yeah, and maybe the other thing on Pepi, just thinking about this in the context of the World Cup, which is a hot topic for Ricardo Pepi, I think there's a big risk when you're a striker of moving somewhere where you can't guarantee service, moving somewhere where you can't guarantee that you're going to have opportunities to score goals. He's done that before when he goes to Augsburg and he never gets the ball because Augsburg were so dire in the Bundesliga. If you're Pepi and you move now, 18 months from a World Cup, a little less than that, there's a lot of risk in that. If you stay at PSV, you're already Poch's guy at this point because Balogun's been hurt. There's nowhere for you to go up in the striker depth chart for the U.S., and you're scoring goals. I know it's hard not to start every game. The starts are coming when de Jong leaves. I just don't see a lot of value in change for Pepi at this stage. Ride at some sort of World Cup boost, move in that summer of 2026, move 18 months from now, and I think you're still going to get to check off all the boxes that you want to check in your career.
Wow. I think he should make that Liverpool move. Maybe opens up a path for Patrick Aubameyang for 2026. I'm just saying, there's paths here for everybody where everyone can be happy. That's what I'm saying.
Not that you have some sort of ulterior motive there or anything for number 33.
No, number 33 for life. Taylor, one other player to have a chat about, Haji Wright at Coventry. Coventry sort of mid-table in the Championship. I think he's got 7 or 8 goals for them this season. But maybe there's a step up to the Premier League for Haji Wright. What are we seeing here?
I have seen very little of Coventry, if I'm being totally honest. He is still one of their more reliable attacking players, their more reliable statistical performers in the attack. That does feel like then if he is going to make a move, it is going to be to a Premier League team that is struggling or fighting for survival, but maybe doesn't have the budget to truly splash cash. Graham, for you, a watcher of every league in the world, as we've established, except for maybe the Madagascan League. Is that the one that you don't have the full series pass on? And then also Bundesliga? Are those the two that you can't get for whatever reason?
Yeah, the Madagascan League and the Bundesliga is bundled together in the UK. Yes.
But a person who has watched the Championship and the lower half of the Premier League table, is there a club that you think could do well with Haji Wright?
Yeah, certainly. So the reporting was that Leicester City and Ipswich have both been linked with Haji Wright. Apparently Coventry would be open to selling, but only if they make a decent profit on the £8 million they paid for Wright from Antalyaspor, I want to say he was at last time a couple of years ago in Turkey. I think of Wright as someone who is good in quick transition and on the break, right? Those are his qualities, and that's reflected in some of his numbers. I'm just looking at his FB ref profile here. He is in the 97th percentile for progressive carries into the box, so that's his strength. His passing numbers are really poor. There's a lot of red here in the FB ref passing section. So those two teams, Leicester and Ipswich Town, I think Leicester would be a good fit for him. I'm not necessarily saying Ipswich would be a bad fit for him either, but I look at that Leicester team. They've been playing Jordan Ayew on the right side this season. I think at this point, Jordan Ayew's had a great career, but at this point I probably am taking Haji Wright over Jordan Ayew, and I might even take him over Mavadidi on the left, because of course Haji Wright has been playing on the left more commonly for Coventry this season. He's out injured at the moment, we should say, for Coventry, so he's not played for a little while.
Let's talk about that.
But yeah, obviously, I don't think Haji Wright is of the level where he's going to go to a Premier League club that is definitely going to finish in mid-table. He is just naturally going to go to a kind of relegation struggler. And Leicester and Ipswich are of a level where even if they get relegated this season, you would presume they will be quite high up in the Championship table above Coventry City. So I could still see it as a move up in that way.
Not to be down on every single transfer rumor we've discussed, but I'm going to continue to be down on every single transfer rumor we've discussed because, as you said, Graham, he's been out since early November. I think is expected back early February, so not too far away, but it seems a little confusing to me that a team that is fighting for survival and a team in Leicester that has been very close to financial penalties as well, if they are going to spend some money, you would assume they would want it to be for somebody who's in like red hot form or coming in fully fit and ready to go, as opposed to a player who has to return from injury, then get up to speed, then get up to like playing speed, and then come in and have an impact. So it would be interesting if he made that move, because it means that they're backing him to have an impact and they're seeing him as a player who can sort of help with survival or be a very strong performer for them next season if and when they go down. But if he doesn't, I'm also not too upset about it, because it gives him an opportunity to continue to play somewhere where he is comfortable, where he can get results, where he can get back into fitness and then make a move in the summer, theoretically.
All right, there we go. Transfer roundup complete. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, a couple of your questions. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to USMNT Weekly. Listener question time. John Adams has been in touch via the Discord, who says, thinking about the January camp, I'm curious. If MLS does shift the calendar, as is rumoured, does Camp Cupcake die? Kind of has to, right? Is that good or bad? Will it be harder for fringe players to get their initial looks if there is no Cupcake Taylor? Presumably, if the calendar shifts, there is no Cupcake, right? That has to be a relic of the past if the calendar shifts.
I mean, yes, I would say so, as I lose my headphones somehow. Such was my emphatic nod, that I lose my headphones as I record. Yeah, I think short of MLS being like, we want to do a mid-season break for a national team window, which wouldn't make a ton of sense, my understanding is that the January camp exists largely because the MLS season is so short that by the time, or relatively speaking, that by the time that they are sort of kicking back off in February, March, when you have the March, April windows, players aren't really in good form, aren't really in good fitness, and so it made the league look bad, it made MLS players look bad, and so there was an idea that you get this January camp, you can, to some extent, prolong the MLS season, because for certain players, you're basically giving them an extra opportunity to get some training in, to get some sharpness, to get some national team looks. But if you don't have that need to prolong the season and prolong that training, and you now have a season going over those dates, yeah, I don't see Camp Cupcake continuing to exist.
Yeah, there we go. I think that's a fairly... Anyone else got anything to add to that? I think...
Ooh, I got something. I do think there is a way in a world in which January camp continues, literally in its January camp form. We're talking August to May for the MLS calendar, most likely instead of February to December, which is essentially what it is now. Your offseason is June, July. That doesn't work for obvious reasons with international windows. But I could see some sort of January camp during the winter break that MLS is talking about, right? You can't switch to the calendar that MLS is thinking about switching to and play through December, January, and February. Earlier reports said that MLS was thinking about taking a 5-week winter break from mid-December to the beginning of February. I could see this camp continuing almost exactly as it is now. Now, it could be that the camp continues, but it switches to be like a U23 camp or something like that, where MLS teams are willing to give up their players. I don't know how MLS teams would feel about this. Right now, U.S. Soccer generally has a good relationship with MLS teams and gets players released for these kinds of camps. But I don't think it's impossible that January camp kind of just continues even if the calendar changes.
I'd be sad to see it go. I've kind of come full circle on Camp Cupcake, where my Eurocentric mind will always find it a little bit confusing. It reminds me of Scotland used to play these B team friendlies for a number of years, and ultimately we got rid of them because they were meaningless and nobody cared. They kind of remind me of that. But I think it's an acknowledgement of the different landscape that exists in American soccer. So I like it for that fact. And I like it as an on-ramp for players who potentially could be part of the national team fold, but maybe aren't quite ready to be introduced to a competitive environment yet. So I think it would be a shame for it not to be a thing anymore.
All right, maybe a casualty of the schedule change. We shall see. John Adams, thank you very much for that question. Stu in the Discord Stu, if you will, says, do you guys think Brendan Aronson has made progress under Daniel Farke from being a Red Buller to a more balanced player comfortable in possession? That. A Red Buller, Graham, is a great term. Leeds technically Red Bullers still, right? If we're going to be technical about it.
They absolutely are, and that Red Bull own a chunk of Leeds United Football Club, so yep, still a Red Buller.
There we go. What are your thoughts, Graham?
Yes, I wrote a piece for FotMob a few weeks ago on Brendan Aronson and how he's won over a lot of doubters at Leeds this season, and he was unpopular at Leeds United. The fans did not like him at all when he went on loan to the Bundesliga last season. He was seen as one of the players, pretty unfairly, but he was blamed, one of the players, along with Weston McKennie, to be honest, who was blamed for their relegation from the Premier League. But he's having a good season in the Championship. He is 5th for minutes among Leeds players in the Championship this season. He's got 7 goals. One of those goals was a really important late winner over Derby County a few weeks ago, which was it capped off this incredible passing move that Aronson finished off inside the box. And I think Aronson has made some progress in terms of his possession game, right? That's the thing that's always talked about with Brendan Aronson is what he does actually on the ball. Leeds are a possession team, so they're averaging the highest possession share per match in the Championship this season. So you will see Aronson play his part in possession phases, and for that FotMob article I watched quite a bit of Leeds United. He's also the same player he always was. You look at Leeds' numbers this season, he is way down in terms of touches per 90 minutes and passes and progressive passes. And when I wrote that article in my research, he seemed to be very much like a finisher in their overall possession structure. And I think that goal against Derby County was the perfect example of that, where he plays a pass in a fairly deep position, but the move is created all around him, the movement's all around him, and essentially he is the dagger into the box, and he finishes from relatively close range, and it's a nice finish. And he's got 7 goals this season. So he is being used in an effective way, but I'm still not convinced that he's really rounded out his game in the way that I know Joe certainly wanted to see from Brendan Aronson.
Yeah, I think I agree with all that. I found some different numbers. I actually found that he's attempting 2 and change passes more per 90 than at any point of his career. Not a big increase whatsoever, barely notable.
Is that just standard passes? That's not like progressive passes?
Yeah, just passes overall. Okay. He's attempting just under 2 short passes more per 90 than at any point of his career. Again, not a big jump, but he is moving the ball short a little bit more. He's having a career high in terms of passes into the box. But again, these are like, hey, if you're not watching on YouTube, you don't get to see this. Also, you maybe listen to the podcast on one ear, watch YouTube on the other. Just sync them up. That's the way to do it.
Double dose.
I don't want to alienate our podcast listeners. If this is where he was before, this is where he is now. Imagine I just put one hand barely on top of the other hand for you at home. I think mostly Aronson's career year, and Graham's totally right, he is having one at the moment, is down to him playing for the best team in the championship. And I think his slightly increased possession stats are a result of him playing for the most possession-dominant team in the championship. I'm sure some of that rubs off on him. I think it would be hard not to, but not enough has rubbed off on him to the point where he looked like a noticeably different player for the U.S., right? Which is, I assume, kind of where this question is coming from in a lot of ways. We've seen him play multiple times for Pochettino. He looks like the Brendo that we have come to know and at times appreciate for exactly who he is. I don't really expect that to change.
That's how the saying goes, yep.
Yeah, we know and appreciate for who you are. That's how it goes.
There we go. Good stuff. That's actually a good way to listen to TSS, by the way. One earphone, the podcast,
Yeah, right?
one on the YouTube. Just do it on a loop, like all day long from different IP addresses.
Yeah,
and
ideally.
That'd be great if everyone could just do that and just leave it running overnight. It's fine. We'd like that a lot. Let's do one more question, Taylor, if you don't mind. This
Sure.
one I'm picking for no particular reason from Andrew in the Discord. Patrick Agyemang looked really good on Saturday. Do you believe he could find a spot in a fairly crowded striker pool? Yes, Taylor, and we're out.
Yeah, that's it. Solved. Done. The answer is yes. The then follow-up question is how likely is it? And I would say less likely, but not impossible. I think that's about where I am because, as we talked about in the review, the number 9 position is one where the U.S. has depth in terms of they have people who can play that role, but they certainly don't have anybody who I feel fully confident in starting every single game. We know they're going to score goals. We know they're going to do exactly what's asked. It still feels like it is a battle between Balogun and Pepi for who is actually going to end up as that kind of consistent starter. And even there are concerns and reasons for optimism for both, but also reason for skepticism for both. And so if Agyemang scores again and continues to do what's asked of him in training, this is what we talked about. This is the importance of the January camp, that if he comes into training, does exactly what's asked of him, plays well, shows that he can understand the Poch system, shows that he's an intelligent player on and off the pitch, and then scores goals on top of that, I think he gets more looks in March, presuming, of course, that there is an opportunity there, that there aren't other players sort of ahead of him in that depth chart so that he can get at least a call up into the camp. But I think you have to then work really, really hard to overcome the other players that have been there longer, that are playing at a higher level. So I think it's possible. I don't think it happens if he scores 2 goals against Costa Rica or anything like that, but I think it requires kind of sustained success and a willingness and ability to fight his way through, both with his MLS club and then with the national team if and when he's called back in.
Yeah, I agree with Taylor on all that. There are names that are above Agyemang in the pecking order right now. I don't think that's going to change. The question is how many of those names are there going to be? I think World Cup 26 is almost certainly not going to be on the cards for Agyemang. At the same time, the reason why he's so fun, and I'm so glad that everybody is now on board the Patrick Agyemang train. It's a lot of fun to be on. Is he has some traits that are, choo-choo, Ryan, I love it. He has some traits that are like different. You know, he's got some kind of singular traits to his game, with his speed, with his 1v1 dribbling ability, which is pretty rare for a guy that's as big as he is. And even for a striker as well, he can create his own shot a little bit, and we kind of saw that some in the game against Venezuela. He also has a lot to work on. And I think the answer to this question probably depends on how much progress he makes in his work with his timing off the ball, with his movement, which we saw some of in this game against Venezuela the other day. His work with his back to goal, I think still needs to improve. And his passing game, I still don't think is particularly strong. He's also barely played professional soccer. So I don't think any of those things are a huge surprise. The question is, can he get better at those things soon-ish, given that he is a late bloomer, to really have a chance to climb over some more established guys at a similar age in the pecking order? It's going to be hard, but it is not impossible. And that's fun because he's a really fun player.
Joe, like asking you very much on the fly this one, if you're doing your depth chart for your number 9s, sure, where would you put him? I'd say he's probably 4th or 5th right now for me.
Yeah, so let's run through the list. Pepi, Balogun, Sargent's probably my top 3.
Yep.
We saw Brandon Vasquez get a call up under Pochettino already. I know this is my depth chart. I probably would have Vasquez still ahead of Agyemang, just as like a safe option. There's probably some blindingly obvious other options.
I was running through it as well. There's like Haji Wright, but usually he's called in to play like maybe as a forward, maybe out wide. You could say Jesus Ferreira could be on that list. Daryl DK is supposedly coming back into fitness. You never know with Daryl DK. I doubt he is ahead of Agyemang at this point. I'm not sure if there's other ones.
I think, what did you say, 4th when you led me in? I think in that 4th to 5th range. I mean, again, if there's a must-win game for the U.S. tomorrow, I'm probably taking Jesus Ferreira over Patrick Agyemang. Really, and this is just my lack of tolerance for risk. If you're asking me to buy stock in one of those players that is not Pepi or Balogun or Sargent, I'm probably picking Agyemang as that guy. But again, that's 3 dudes ahead of him in the pecking order, and you're not bringing 4 strikers to any tournament. So it's uphill sledding, but I don't know, maybe he's a good sledder. I'm probably not living in Charlotte, but maybe you've had some snow, Ryan. Maybe he knows how to do it.
Yeah, maybe we're getting some this week. It's very cold here at the moment, Joe. You never know.
My bad. Sorry for the weather chat. My fault. My fault.
There's a lot of qualifiers to buy that stock. I did enjoy that analogy there. By the way, Joe.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Graham, any more on this one, or should we get out of here?
No, I echo everything that has been said. I wouldn't be putting money on him making the 26 roster, but he's on the radar in a way that he wasn't before this camp, and that's kind of what this camp is for. So, thumbs up.
I'm currently fascinated by how risk averse Joe truly is. Like, Joe, if we go to an ice cream parlor and their options are like vanilla and then like pistachio lemon, are you going to roll the dice with pistachio lemon, or are you going vanilla? You know what it is. You know you can trust it. Like, where is the line, Joe? Let's find out.
I care about the U.S. winning a must-win game significantly more than I care about maybe being slightly disappointed with my ice cream choice. So I will go
to your own detriment.
Pistachio lemon. I'm very much a non-fruit ice cream guy. Like, I prefer my ice creams to not be fruity, but all ice cream is good ice cream, so I'll go with pistachio lemon. If you just said pistachio, I'd be more interested, to be honest.
See, that's why I tried to make it riskier.
Yeah,
Okay, Joe, it's late night. We're in New York. There's a hot dog vendor on the corner. Do you get one or not? You're hungry.
Depends on how hungry I am.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
If Graham is sort of like cupbearer to the king in this case, in which Graham goes first and he eats the whole thing, we wait an hour and then I eat mine, then I'm fine.
I frequent the kebab shops of Scotland. A hot dog vendor in New York is nothing on the risk scale for me.
Your stomach's made of
you might be
iron at this
backwards.
point, Graham. You're fine. Don't worry about that.
I think you might have those flips, but that's okay.
All right, and that does it for USMNT Weekly for this week. Joe Lowry from Paris, thank you very much indeed for your contributions.
And merci to you as well, Ryan.
Taylor Rocco, thank you very much indeed, sir.
Welcome.
And Graham Ruthven, pleasure as always, my good man.
Thank you, Ryan Bailey. Not doing an accent.
Well, you
kind of are.
Yeah, it's just.
Okay, I'm doing this accent, not another accent.
Hey, Graham,
I'm the
bad
only one
news.
not doing an accent, just to be
you
clear.
are.
This is how English is meant to sound. Listener, thank you very much indeed for joining us on this podcast. We'll be back on the feed very shortly, but for now, bye!